Hey guys, Disaster here with another video. This one is a highlight from round one of season one, tournament one. Lots of ones. Um, quite a few people watched this one live. It's between Blues and Inappropriate Act. It's a best of five as always in the season, and it was just a really exciting set. I'm not going to cover the games in great detail because I don't want this video to be like horrendously long. But we'll be giving them a watch. We will be giving them a watch. So, this is game one, and let's just begin. I've got the speed on normal. I'll just, I'll pause things here and there, but some bits should go through a bit quicker. One thing we will see throughout this set, though, is the use of sample teams. So, from the get-go, a lot is revealed about what we're seeing. Blues, the Flareon lead indicates like a particular stall team which leads with Flareon, and the Glalie lead. There's a couple of teams which lead with Glalie. There's a Rain team, and then there's a Tauros Kadabra offensive team. And here pretty straightforward plays, just flamethrower. As Muck comes in, not wanting to let the spikes go up from the Flareon. Nothing too complicated, but it's interesting that he decides to stay in with Flareon against the Muck. I don't think there's much benefit to it, but he decides to use it to get Slowking in safely. So it works out, but that team has multiple answers to Muck. But yeah, he decided to sort of go that way about it. One thing that you'll see, especially, it's a common dynamic that you probably should get used to when watching these things as well, is that, like, Fortress, one of its biggest entry points is Whiscash. We see that in action here. Pretty simple. The Earthquake does like 18%, and Fortress has the edge here. There are like quite a lot of mistakes in these sets, but I won't go into them too much detail. Besides, maybe at the end, there's some stuff that I do want to cover a bit. But I'll sort of go to like the big mistakes and explain why they're mistakes and how they could have been foreseen. Right now we see Mixed Tauros putting in work. Catching this Fortress doing about 50. Taurus' special attack is so bad that it has to not drop its special attack to hit Keo Fortress with Fire Blast. Just it's pathetic, but at the same time, it's worth it in this tier. You can see there. I would say though that once that's revealed, then this Taurus is less threatening, as the Clefable does handle it really nicely. But Blues tries to pivot around it, going to Flareon, protecting, get a bit of HP, which is it's alright, but I think it's quite risky. And what we sort of see in this game a bit is Blues playing pretty risky with a team that's just ultra solid. This team has almost got no win condition beyond spiking, which is a big problem with it. I feel but in practice it works really quite well. So yeah. But this is where quite a strange sequence goes on. He goes into Fortress and then doubles into Steelix against the Glalie and takes so much from the Ice Beam. But yeah, the thing with this team is really about is just get up your spikes. It's got a Light Screen Clefable to help with that as well, because then you've got stuff that uses fire moves that only do 50%, like Tauros and Meganium. You can set up your spikes on those. Is the key idea, really. But yeah, he decides to bring in Steelix into Glalie, and then trades Steelix for Glalie. And before we even reveal the last Pokemon, does this look like a bad move to you? There's a Muck, there's a Tauros, there's a Kadabra. Steelix is pretty good versus all of them. I mean, Mixed Tauros will do about 30% with Fire Blast. Kadabra will do a lot with Fire Punch, but Earthquake back from Steelix one-hit KOs. It resists Sludge Bomb. Well, it's immune to Sludge Bomb. it hurts Makatam with Earthquake. Just like Steelix is really awesome in this matchup, and he could have gone to just like Flareon or kept him Fortress and gone for the spin, or gone for a Toxic trying to catch him with Stravers, or going for Spike Slayers. I mean, there was a lot of options, but that play sadly didn't make much sense. And the last Pokemon is also handled by Steelix and nothing else on this team, because being a stall team, you can't handle every Pokemon with like multiple of your own Pokemon. At least not in ADV. Maybe in GSC you can hope to do something like that, but in ADV you will often just have like one proper answer to a Pokemon. And Subcarmine Bestravis usually runs Thunderbolt and Psychic, so Steelix is an awesome answer to it. But you can't beat it with like Toxic unless you catch it on the switch in. So you have a bloody awful time versus it basically with this team if you just explode your Steelix so early. And yeah, really like that single misplay defines the game, and this team's simply helpless against this Misdreavus now that Steelix is gone. So just because it's a hype set doesn't mean the players play perfectly. I'd say also both of them are pretty good. I would say that IA is stronger I'd say they're both stronger as players than builders, and there's still things that both of them need to learn about the tier. And this kind of like shows it as well. But it's an exciting set for many reasons. I'm gonna set this one up to hyper fast because this game's almost over, but I do want to show it on the camera. Well, there we go. Blues forfeits, realizing there's nothing he can do as the Clefable gets paralyzed. And that's all there is to it, really. In game 1, if we go on to game 2, well, let's see what happens. Golduck versus Typhlosion. My goodness. Let me just pause it. So, just like what these usually indicate, lead Golduck can be any of the Golduck sets, besides maybe the Rest Talk set. But like Calm Mind Hypnosis and Subcalm Mind, which are about equally common, both can be run in the lead slot. You're more likely to see, well, both of them can be run outside of the lead slot with the right team structure. And then there's also Froduxy, which is funny to say. It's named after Frodazi, since he created it, which is Subcalm Mind plus Hypnosis. Then you just have Surface Stab. Any of those sets it could be. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward that Duck has Water Move, Typhlosion fears it. Lead Typhlosion indicates probably some kind of balance. Almost definitely with Spikes. And this Typhlosion will probably be Lumberry mixed with Fire Blast, Thunder Punch, Earthquake, and most likely HP Ice, but HP Grass has its benefits as well. And yeah, that's what to expect, but Golduck can Hydro or Hypnosis or Calm Mind. I mean, it can kind of do anything, but Inappropriate Act needs to bring an answer here, and he does with Lantern. And Blue's Hydros, that's like perfectly reasonable. Doesn't achieve a whole lot, but it keeps IA honest. And yeah, I'm just going to let the game get underway a little bit. Hidden Power Fire, and in comes Sableye, which is it's an interesting Pokemon. And like you can see this team as well, it's like it's kind of balanced. Like, I mean, you've got Sableye rather than Misdreavus. It almost feels like stallish, but you'll see later that it's got an interesting mixture to it that's like a little bit creative. So Sableye's got some huge upsides. Like Knock Off is an awesome move, although there is Sticky Hold Mark, which does hold it back a bit. And it's immune to normal and psychic. So even though it's like its stats are really subpar and its spikes weak and toxic weak and so, it's got a lot of flaws. But it's amazing versus teams with like Tauros, Kadabra, and Misdreavus. Like those three offensive Pokemon, which we just saw in the last game. All have like the strongest attack bar for Misdreavus, handled by Sableye, and Sableye can one-hit KO both Missy and Kadabra. So yeah, it's got some strong matchups. It's got some pretty weak ones as well. It's got plenty of flaws. We'll see like whether Blues is able to exploit them though. And what he wants to do to take this knockoff. which he protects to scout, which is reasonable, and he takes it with duck, which is honestly not unreasonable. It's not. I mean, there's upsides, there's downsides to it, but given that there's probably not going to be like an aggron alongside, you probably don't need duck defensively that much, and like lefties aren't really that big of a deal on it, so it makes sense and it lets him put pressure here. Goes for hypnosis and misses. And again, and it hits on Crobat, and yeah, this is kind of one of those things that makes like Hypnoduck a bit of an annoying inclusion to the tier. I mean, it has like some cool impacts, like in terms of like how you can build with it, like structurally and so on. But the fact that you can't reliably sleep sack to it because of that horrible accuracy, it makes it awkward for both sides because you can't rely on it. But you also can't reliably play against it because of that. Because if you know, like, if it was like a 90% accuracy, you could switch in Crobat on like the likely hypnosis, and then that's fine. You absorb the sleep. But if it's like 60%, then it's a little bit shakier. But IA does manage to absorb it successfully. Goes Lantern to punish. Interesting choice of going Tauros there. It does punish the Lantern pretty nicely. It's a pretty free Earthquake here, so... But... Sneaky move. There are definitely some cool bits of this match. It's not as one-sided as the first one ended up being. This is like one of those cool tricks that I just love about ADV 50 is Kadabra. With Lumberry Synchronize. Just like the power to turn your tables on the opponent, like... He anticipated that with the Tauros on Lantern matchup that he would stay in and go for something. Or potentially just like switch to Fortress as well. Or Kadabra. I mean, I don't love the play because like if Inappropriate Act just went Kadabra there, then like what have you achieved? But Earthquake seemed pretty likely. Yeah, I mean, I don't really love the play from IA's end. Like Toxicking a Tauros is not like a huge deal when you could switch in Fortress or Sableye. But anyway, what actually ended up occurring, Synchronized Lumberry, means that the only Pokemon that got toxic out of that exchange was the one using it, which is just like really neat. And it's especially nasty on Kadabra against paralysis-based teams because it's a fast threat that you can't actually handle with paralysis reliably. And that alone just like makes it really pretty good in that matchup. I mean, there's still... Like now, since that was sort of realized, like those teams do prepare for it, but often it'll just be like, well, we've got an Aggron. And, it will hold up initially, but it's a bit softer and you can exploit that. And Kadabra like does have a nice matchup because of like these tricks. But yeah, that's what ended up occurring. But how is Blue's going to carry this on now? Because like Sableye can come in. Could go like Misdreavus, and he decides to go back into Fortress. Which is strange. I'm not sure why why Sableye just didn't come in at all in that sequence. It was a Tauros and a Kadabra, but I mean, I'm sure it'll be awesome later because just like look at that matchup. There's nothing not to love about it. And like another Lumberry user here, Typhlosion coming in safely on that Fortress is pretty nifty. Since to a degree, like some teams really do check Typhlosion by like poisoning it and praying, since it does rely a bit on its coverage to do its job, and the team's also got like protect and gaining him and so on. So there's tools, but like this team probably more relies on the fact that Tauros and Kadabra are faster than anything. I don't understand necessarily why I didn't just like go for a spike there. That is one of those mistakes where like my explanation for why that's such a huge mistake is like spikes affects every one of those Pokemon on that team almost. It doesn't affect the Crobat, but it affects most of them. It's like 12% on the switching, whereas like Toxic, not only can it miss or can it hit an immunity, which there's already Crobat and Fortress, and like Lantern, which was already poisoned, and Lumberry as well from like Typhlosion. Like I mean, obviously, besides even like all of that, the fact that it can go wrong, even if you did like land permanent status, which is, sometimes it's worth going for. But, like, spikes early early in the game. I mean, it's like 10-11. It's like the game's got going, but it's still quite early in the game. And just, it's forcing, like over the long term, you'll be wearing those Pokemon down. You'll prevent them from being able to switch freely. Like that's the key thing. I mean that's like also why like Stealth Rock is so good, like in DPP and so on, and like the more passive damage you can add, the better. I mean, you've already got like the Toxic on Lantern as well. Like there's the more of that, the more your opponent's on the timer, and you force them to like to make plays and prove that they can beat you, even while on that timer. So yeah, I mean both. Well, Inappropriate Act brought in like Fortress, but only to pivot really, I think. But still definitely had an opportunity to spike there and missed it, and it could well end up mattering. And yeah, we do see that this team's like difficulty pivoting around like Golduck, but he does make a nice move, forcing on Typhlosion. And Earthquake set by Inappropriate Act, and like there's definitely like a lot of plays I question here, like sacking Lantern when you've got like that Golduck there. It looks like really bad for IA here, but weirdly actually that knockoff was huge, because after it takes that Fire Punch, then that Thunder Punch. After it takes that Fire Blast, then Thunder Punch. Not only is Golduck in range because of like a little bit of chip, but it stays in range because of the knockoff. So that was nice. But yeah, he does use it to pivot around and bring in Kadabra again here. But you know, it's like, how is he going to get past like the Sableye, and how is he going to stop Crobat from like causing havoc as well? And like, yeah, in comes Sableye. You can't just freely spam Psychic, and he goes for a Calm Mind here. It just like doesn't do anything. So I mean, there's some questionable plays from both sides, but it is still an interesting game. And Inappropriate Acts team. I mean, these are all teams that are built, by the way. But that team is like, it's very defensively solid. You've got a Whiscash, a Foray, a Lantern, Sableye, but then you've also got like this immense offensive pressure as well, in just like two of like the best cleaner and the best wall breaker almost. And Typhlosion and Crobat, and then he sacks Fortress there because he's not able to play around this Typhlosion for very long, and he can't actually break through that defensive core very well. So, I mean, like, this game is more of an example of like this team just really doing its job. It's like being really difficult to break, plus having Pokemon that are difficult to switch into repeatedly in the long term. And, you know, it's just working. And Blues needed to sort of like find a creative way of getting through that. Like maybe, you know, like if Hypnosis had hit the Lantern earlier, maybe that would have helped. But yeah, it's definitely Blues hasn't been able to chip the team down like at all, besides the mysterious Lantern sack. Yeah, and he's just having a hard time because of that. So I'll set this one to fast, because at this point there's really not much that can be done. Like every time Typhlosion comes in, you've got like a free fire move. Every time Crobat comes in, it Sleep Talks and KOs something, unless Meganium's in, ironically, in which case it can protect, and so on. Taurus gets knocked off as well here. Fortress can come in and do whatever the heck it wants. Yeah, I'll set it even faster, because yeah, this is very much over. He does get an Iron Tail defense drop on the Fortress, which means that even without the band, it's doing substantial damage, but he still is able to get the Toxic and the Rapid Spin. And I mean, he doesn't get a Spike, but he doesn't need it at this point because his sweepers are just so good. So yeah, let's just like let this play out. There is at least one more game after this, so there we go. Blues forfeits. On to game 3. So obviously at this point, Inappropriate Act's up 2-0. He just needs to win one more game, but can he do it? Can he do it this game? Can he do it next game? The game after that? Like, will he do it? You see sub-pass Rapidash, or sub-something Rapidash. Could be sub-toxic, but there's not a sample with sub-toxic Lead Rapidash. It's a good set, but it's not what's being used here. Sub-pass lead Rapidash indicates Lanoon, belly drum Lanoon, which is like a very scary sweeper. If you misplay around it, especially. And even if you do know how to play around it, it's still like really threatening and quite forcing. Like you do have to know exactly what you're doing when you're faced with the possibility of it. But yeah, we get something very strange here. A Hypnosis Golduck Calm Mind War. Yeah, I'm going to let this play fast because they do stay in for quite a while rather than either of them switching out. And like each time, like one of them gets to wake up, go for the Hypnosis hit and so on, and like slowly Calm Mind boosting up. Yeah, I'm just going to play this through very quick. It does take a while for them to boost it. I was wondering at a certain point if one of them might run out of Hydro Pump in this. At this point, they've still got a healthy amount of PP. But it's only 8. It's only 8. And when they're on like an equal level of boost, it only does a bit over 30, I think. In which case, you're talking about like a 4-hit KO, and then there's misses and Hypnosis and everything. And it's possible that they really just burn each other out of PP before one of them gets KO'd or a critical hit happens. What we end up seeing, though, I'm going to slow down as stuff does start to eventually happen after this like peculiar Calm Mind War. Is Inappropriate sets that Golduck to sleep, and then peculiarly switches out to Electrode. Now, at +6 special defense, this thing isn't going to care about Thunderbolt. Also in this metagame, they almost always run Cloud9 because the advantage versus weather teams is just crazy, and it's like useful on weather teams as well, and so on. The explosion unity, I mean, it's nice, but it's not as good as Cloud9 generally. So, Electrode explodes, and yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I don't think it was a good move, but it is still a 1-for-1 trade where you lost very little. And it's still early in the game, so I'm like, I don't know if it's a choke, it's like a decision. It's hard to say how valuable Electrode would be. But I will say for those who are not like familiar with the tier, like what Electrode does is it is genuinely like a fast defensive Electric type, and one that has explosion as well as like Light Screen and Thief and Subtoxic and so on available to it. I mean, it's got a lot of options, which is like part of what makes it good, but as well as it's like insane speed. But its bulk and its special attack are definitely adequate. Like if it had like 30 less base speed and didn't have explosion, you'd still use it sometimes. It's like that good in this tier contextually. But yeah, so back to sort of a game. We see IA going for a Hypnosis against the Tauros, which may well have Lum, and yeah, there's definitely some funny choices and funny moments in this one, I think. But one thing is that IA does have this, Blues does have this great answer to the Sceptile, which is this Meganium, because it just does not care about. I mean, it takes 38 from HP Fire, which is like, it's a lot, but it's also really not a lot, especially with like Protect and everything. And yeah, curious play actually. If we just go back, I'll just sort of spiel a bit. Actually, I'm going to go back a couple times, spiel a bit about like what's going on here. Yeah, the Meganium does like handle the Sceptile really well. When Sceptile can't even get Sub-Seed going, it's going to struggle to put in that much work. But the thing is that what IA had here and maybe should have gone for was he could have just hard switched Rapidash in. Because the damage on Meganium is just not going to be that crucial. Whereas like Rapidash gets a free sub, you also will get like a Flash Fire boost from HP Fire. And you get to see what else Blues has for it. And, potentially you can even bring in Lanoon, which will be hiding in the back on this team. And, Blues will know as well that this is the Lanoon team. That's part of why he plays aggressively around it here as well. It's like he doesn't then let Rapidash come in for free. He punishes it with Crobat. Ironically, he's running like an old version of the team, and we'll see that it's actually Adamant Crobat, which is painful. You also have the opportunity here to HP Ground because it's super effective on Rapidash. Golduck's weak. Lanoon's not switching in. Sceptile's really not switching in, even though it resists HP Ground. The last is Aggron, so missed opportunity, but that's Pokemon. We see a free Choice Band Focus Punch from Aggron since it's immune to Sludge Bomb, and that's always going to be a Choice Band Crobat. So, lands like a really hefty chunk on Fortress. And IA is back in the driver's seat as well. He's got the momentum on his side again. He could go Rapidash or Sceptile or even Golduck to punish and get that Hypnosis off. But since he did lock in a Focus Punch, Crobat can come back in. I mean, Blues could go for a Spike, but he goes for the interesting decision of going back to Crobat. And Crobat is just a huge threat against this team. So it's enough of a threat to justify that play that it's more value to just keep bringing Crobat and threatening HP Ground and pressuring things with that than it is to do anything with Fortress to even get up a Spike. And yeah, there's the HP Ground, and IA decides to just sack Rapidash rather than maybe Golduck, which maybe would have been wiser. It's hard to say what the best move is there because Crobat's just really good there. And yeah, Kadabra sort of gets sacked here. He does pivot. And IA HP fires, assuming that the Crobat would be faster, since it's got higher base speed, because Blues is using an old import from before Sceptile was added. It's Adamant Crobat. Yeah, the team has no rock resist as well, such as CB Rock Slide from Aggron does take out Fortress there in return for a Spike Slayer. It's not like he was able to one-hit KO either, so... But yeah, we'll see an interesting finish to this one as well. So we've got Sceptile in on Tauros, and probably the most threatening thing here is subbing into Overgrow range and then going for a crit Leaf Blade on the Tauros. The fact that it outspeeds Crobat doesn't hurt. Probably, I don't know how much it'll actually help here, but that's sort of where the threat is at the moment to deal with this Tauros. But what we see is Meganium comes in here now, and with Lanoon in the back, what IA really wants is to somehow set up Lanoon safely. That's the win con here. I mean, Kadabra will die anyway, but Tauros and Crobat, you need the belly drum boost to get through. But he decides, an interesting decision was he actually does bring the Meganium down to 10%. So he went for the crit really on the Meganium, since maybe we thought it'd be nice to hear, or maybe he forgot about Overgrow. Because with the belly drum and Overgrow, Giga Drain KOs, and that's just the game. So, part 1 of the Blues comeback is complete. He wins game 3, but he's still down 1-2 against IA. Can he pull it back? Let's see what happens. Just go to Hyperfast and let this one finish. Yeah, that's the game. Game 4. I hope I've not been I hope we've been talking the right amount. On this one, because obviously it's a bit tough to know. I hope this doesn't go on too long. How long has it been going? It's already been half an hour. But about 10 minutes a game, that's pretty good. It's gonna have to be a long video because there's quite a few games. We're on to the 4th one, then maybe a 5th one if #Blues comeback happens. But yeah, we see another like spiked interaction. Like Fortress is used spikes are used about 50% of the time in the tier according to the statistics from the off-season tournament, which is like, hey, isn't that cool? I can cite statistics in the middle of these games. So yeah, it's you're often going to see like spike-based interactions early on in the game, and this is one of those games where you do. Fortress comes in to try and spin away Glalie spikes. Is it like taunts to prevent spikes of its own? Blues just brings in Mistravus, and there's a threat of Subcon Mind without that much being revealed, but he just taunts, which means it's not a Subcon mindset. Means, in fact, well, I don't know whether I could suss this out, but it means it's a rain dance. Mistravus, like, the reason for that is, like, Subcon Mind is what you run most of the time, but Mistravus can run weather support, but if you run Sunny Day, you run, like, Sunny Day, HP Fire, Psychic, and then, like, Filler, which could be taunt, but, you know, you got HP Fire already for Fortress. But on the Rain Dance one, like, you don't run HP Fire there, so you need taunt to prevent spikes. You like taunt Rain Dance, and you got like Thunder to abuse it, and then the nifty little tech that I thought up, and it comes in quite nicely here, is Thief. And it hits like the best possible target for a rain team, which is Lantern. And then, you know, in comes Lantern of Blues' own to stop IA's Lantern doing anything else. You could have also gone to like Glalie potentially and gone for like extra Spike Slayers, but he opts against it. Could have also gone for Rain Dance even, but yeah, it's a bit early in the game for that. But in comes Credilli, which is an interesting choice rather than like Fortress or anything. But there's nothing to be gained by A for staying in with that matchup. Like, he doesn't know if you'll need to keep like Lantern around, but it's lost this item. You can't afford to have it take attacks it doesn't need to, so completely sensible play from IA there going into Credilli. Blues tries pivoting around it and goes for Rain Dance and sacks it, and in comes Huntail going for some kind of a sweep early on to break things open. Like with Lantern, like losing its lefties like that, then there's a lot of pressure here. Let me see, like there's a Hydro as well, and because there's no lefties, then that sticks. And if there's a second Rain Dance sweeper in the pack, which spoiler there is, then that's like really huge because this Lantern it's at 25%. If it takes spikes when it comes in as well, then you're talking like 12%, and it's dying to Rain boosted Hydros already. And that's really good for a rain team. And then like the Credilli and like whatever's last are the only things really stopping a Rain Dance sweep if it can get set up. And to be honest, like that's what this game's really going to be about. Now I really should like spin here is Mistravus is down, so the spin is just completely free. He does get it. He gets up like 3 Spike Slayers. So I mean that Fortress is put in work. Fortress is Fortress for a reason. It's a good Pokemon, but he does struggle to then do anything to this Lantern, and really he could have like gone to his own Lantern, but then like in comes Credilli again anyway, and it's like, well, you can understand it, but maybe you should have gone for Rock Sliders. You've got Power Flinch, it's Stab, it's a bit stronger. Huntail's got like surprisingly good defense. Like this one doesn't have leftovers, it's actually Mystic Water, but it does have surprisingly good defense, so you can't just like Earthquake and expect it to do a lot even from like max attack on Credilli. Yeah, what we end up seeing happening is like a Rock Slide miss. Blues gets some luck here. Just starts pushing with Huntail. Keeps throwing out Ice Fiends, hoping for like a freeze or a crit. It's super effective because Credilli's got like a really weird typing. It just resists like normal and electric. He gets the crit, kills the Credilli, and all of a sudden, can we talk about how much of a threat Mantine would be? Like Rain Dance Mantine here, if it can set up. You can't really set it up on CB Tauros, but Aggron comes in, and you know we've got a problem. It's a free double edge. It's a free KO. And yeah, some interesting decisions here because like really ultimately, Mantine's gonna sweep. Like there's almost nothing that can swap it except for like CB Tauros like logged into return, preventing it setting up. But like Blues' team is going down though right now. But he does get to set up a rain dance, and at this point he just, since that's CB Tauros like from the team, it can't KO both like Aggron and Mantine. So Hydro takes out Nidoqueen, and that's the game. He'll lock into return here, like even if like Hydro misses. But then, like, what are you gonna do against like Aggron? I mean, he's just like CB double edge, and it's taking 12% at a time. So, yeah. Although Blues goes for Rock Slide Risking Miss, it's just like one of those little things that it ultimately didn't matter. But imagine that if he'd like missed one of those rock slides and Tauros could have returned, then all of a sudden he would have lost that endgame, which he had no business losing. So, yeah. Blues manages to clutch back again, and we're 2-2 all square. I was watching this with TK Leach live. We were sort of discussing the battle, and we were like, like we were having like a hard time believing that he would win it early on. Once he thiefed the Manta, that was like a little bit interesting, but it's like, why would you pick Rain to clutch on demand? Like it's such a difficult style to play. It can win, and it did win here, but it's like the style that you would not pick if you were clutching on demand for most people in this tier. But it was an interesting choice from Blues, and it's a choice that brings us to Game 5. This is for all the beans. They've played 4 games. It's all square. What's going to happen? We see subpass on Lanoon here from Blues. And likely that same Lanoon team that IA used earlier. And IA bringing back like the Glalie Muck team that he won with in the first game. He goes for like the naked hypnosis here, so it's like interesting. He could have gone for, the team does have a proper Muck answer. It's got like a CB Aggron, which like he could have brought in and like freely fired off an attack. But once you're locked in, then there's like some downsides to it. So he sort of wanted to take advantage of the sub, but he couldn't really. So he just like goes with hypnosis on like Muck, and the thing is, you can't just play Golda like this. I mean, sometimes it will work. If you can get like a long sleep, you hit hypnosis, maybe even like crit a Hydra or something, then like it can be ugly. But he went for it when like he probably shouldn't have, and Muck just like outright just like beats that Golduck, even though maybe some other moves could have been like chosen instead. But it just went down. Yeah, but we have a strange looking play here. Just sacked outright. He just sacked Electrode to this Whiscash. Can you believe it? Like, why would you do that? Why would you like sack that? Like that team. I think the last is like a Sceptile. Like you have Whiscash switch-ins, but it does set up on Whiscash. That was a setup opportunity. Now this thing, Carriage Protect, and it goes for it here. Now let me show you some stuff in the calc. Oh my god, please pause. Pause it like just after the moment I wanted it to. So here's what happens against physically defensive Whiscash. Let me switch to the count mode actually. Against physically defensive Whiscash, Lanoon can't one-hit KO. But if I just go into the building, this will probably look like pretty crap on the TV, on the screen, it's not a TV, unless you're watching YouTube on the TV, which I do, and I think that's like pretty basic. Let me just like go through my teams here, pull the spread, and it's a lot more offensive because you want like the surfs to actually hurt stuff. All of a sudden, this calc is almost a guaranteed one-hit KO at full. So does Inappropriate Act just lose? The answer is yes, he does. He just loses here. There's nothing else left for him. Was Lanoon broken? Was there anything Inappropriate Act could have done? Was there anything he could have done to not just get swept there after like this disgusting just sacking Electrode just to set up freely? Is there anything he could have done to prevent Blues from clutching it back from 0 to 2 to 3 to 2, clutching it back this incredible set? Was there anything Inappropriate Act could have done? Lanoon's not at max attack anymore, is it? It's at +4. He has Tauros. He could have gone Mistravas into Tauros or just sacked Tauros. Oh, I just did this all in the calc. Please tell me this doesn't look too bad. It looks alright. Okay. It's not the best. I'm so bad with like the switching of the screens, but I want to show this in the calc. If he drops it to -5, that's only a 12%. That's only like a 1 in 8 chance of one hit carrying. If he manages to somehow get off 2, which he could do with like, if he manages to pivot the Tauros into a Shadow Ball, so it might +4. It doesn't KO. It's not broken. You just had to like get an Intimidate off. He may well have won that game if he did. And he did pause for a while and think on that turn. Maybe he thought that he had a different spread than he did. Maybe he didn't calc at all. Maybe he was just like so petrified. But he had counterplay. He had this available to him. But mistakes are made sometimes in Pokemon. Like that's definitely a part of the game. Blues clutches it back 3 to 2. Inappropriate Act played pretty well as well. I mean, this is like, I wouldn't say that he's like new to the tier, but he's not played a lot of games at this point. He's watched a few, I think, probably, but he's not played that much. And Blues does have a bit more experience, but we just saw Lanoon doing what Lanoon does. Like the difference between Lanoon and like a Mantine or whatever. You make a mistake against like a Mantine or a Whiscash or whatever. The game goes on, you might have lost some tempo, you might have like let a spike go up or something like horrible like that. Like sure, that happens. That happens. When you make a choke against like Lanoon, when you give it like free setup or something like that, when you don't play around it like really accurately, you get 6-0'd. The game just ends. But you know, it's not like Inappropriate Act had to predict what the Lanoon was going to do, though. It's not like, oh, we had to guess the exact coverage right on like a Pokemon that uses like 4 different attacks and like blah, 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 blah. No, he knows exactly what was coming. As soon as like Lanoon switched in, he Earthquake with Whiscash, that was perfectly fine. He protected after, it was perfectly fine. All he had to do was intimidate it, and that Lanoon was going like 2 for 2, like 1 for 2, and he sacked Electrode to even get it in the first place. So he would have like basically traded Electrode and Lanoon for Tauros and Whiscash's almost all of its HP, and the game would have gone on. So yeah, that's how this ended. I hope you enjoyed watching. I'll see you whenever I make another video or in the ADV 50 Discord, which join below. There's plenty more where this came from. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell these players how awesome they are and how cool it is seeing them playing ADV 50 and how we want to see more of it because we do. We want to see them get better and play better, more creative, more interesting games. And that's it for now. See ya.